Pub Battles, Brandywine. Now when I play Brandywine solo, which is most of the time during COVID here, I'm not playing to win, since that's kind of a silly concept when you're playing solo. I'm running the simulation. Now today I have placed part of the army in reserve. I'm using the reserve cards, which you can get with any Pub Battles game. Come with any Pub Battles game. They look like this. Here's one for green. And you set them down and you place your units in reserve behind that card, hidden from your opponent. They're assumed to be on the map right next to your HQ. Of course, you can't do any gamey things with it. You're not supposed to move faster than the units themselves could move and stuff. The whole concept is for a fog of war appearance. When your HQ comes within line of sight of an enemy unit, then you have to place all of the units in reserve on the map behind the HQ. So here I have the Colonial Army line. I was going to put them all in reserve, and then I went, well wait, no, the crossings on the river are the ideal place to meet the enemy because they're flanked when they're in their first round attacking across the river. So you want to be there for that. But you don't know what these second row of units are. You don't know if these are two full-strength units or these are just the detachments that are placed out there. Now Washington was going to have the artillery in his reserve, but if he did, then he couldn't move across the swamps if he wanted to move laterally, because artillery can't move in swamps. So I've separated that. As per my norm, I roll for a random entry point. It's either 1 or 2, the flank force comes on here. 3, 4, it comes on just as expected, along with Nefassin. Or 5, 6, it comes up from this direction. Today I rolled a 4, so Howe and Cornwallis are coming right up the center. Let's begin. The scenario begins on turn 4 and goes through turn 8, so there's 5 turns. The British have entered, nothing unexpected, so the colonial forces are holding their position. Turn 5. Turn 2, combat. There was an artillery duel here, and the colonial artillery was driven back into the woods. Here we have Nefassin's troops charging across Britain's Ford. Ferguson makes the crossing. At Chad's Ford, the militia destroys the rest of the Hessians as they try to cross. Then Abercrombie's light came up and ran right into Maxwell's light, as planned, and they fell back. Sullivan's forces are driven away. Oh man, this is a tough start for the Americans. They got pushed back here and here. The British have crossed, with only the Hessians paying the price, and only Maxwell, Colonial's lone elite unit, holds at the bridge. Pennsylvania, the militia did exactly what they were supposed to do, fire and run off. They fired, they destroyed a bunch of Hessians, and then they got out of there, and Maxwell's troops took care of Abercrombie's light. They're driven back. Turn 3. Okay, third turn, turn 6. Nefassin's artillery drove the militia from the ford, and finally, to get things moving, Cornwallis has his cavalry come across and flank Maxwell's defenders. Let's see if Sullivan can hold things now. So here, he's crossing river, so he's flanked, but they're flanking the attack, so the two flanks cancel out. Maxwell falls back. In very desperate fighting. This is insane. The 1st Colonial Unit, Strand's Minnesotans, the 1st Minnesota, appearing almost 100 years sooner than expected, was destroyed, but not before driving off the Grenadiers and destroying the other promo unit I've got. There we go. Bagans of the Shear. So the 1st Minnesotans wiped out Bilbo Baggins. Still, the fort holds. The Virginians are driven back. The detachment at the ford was destroyed. Now turn 7 begins. The Americans find themselves in a very precarious position, and the chit draw will determine whether or not they're able to rebuild their line. Alright, the chit draw came through favorably for the Colonials again. Oh man! Looks like that was just one too many combats for Maxwell. The militia folded up, as well as Maxwell himself. The British elite of the elite, the Guards, carried the day. Turn 8, last turn. Now note on this last turn, the Americans have fought to the death rather than unpack their bags and bring some of these units back up to full strength. What that means in the end is, if they don't unpack this turn, and why would they, is that there's no baggage to capture. There's no victory point multiplier. Interestingly, for the Americans to win this now, they'll need to attack and cause some casualties. Remember, Washington really wanted to win this battle. Alright, last turn combat. For the first time, it seems, the Americans did not get favorable chit draws. They moved first, every one of their commands, and so any attack they would have made could have either been avoided or they could have got flanked. So they simply fell back. Howe has pushed the attack on the colonial left. Americans just fall back. Again, the Americans just fall back. The Americans destroyed 9 points of British troops, and the British destroyed 13 points of American troops. So at this point, it is a British slight victory. I wouldn't call this a great victory. And the Americans' army is still pretty much intact. You could even call this an American victory.